Commissioners Brown, Harris,
Present.
Herr,
Present.
McCracken,
Present.
Paris,
Present.
Vice Chair Little,
Present.
Chairman Mercy.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, invocation. Commissioner McCracken will lead our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to care for the world in which you created. We come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful, full discussions and allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of this community. In your great name we pray, amen.
Okay, and please remain standing. Commissioner Herr will lead our Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, everybody face to the flag, and on my read, we do it together. Ready? Begin.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, presentations. First up, catalytic converters. We have Amaria Blondia from the LA County District Attorney's Office.
Good morning. I am a Deputy District Attorney at the Antelope Valley Courthouse, and I am the Deputy District Attorney that was assigned to the Antelope Valley Catalytic Converter Task Force, which was named TOPCAT, which actually stands for Targeted Oriented Policing of Catalytic Converters and Auto Theft. This task force was in existence for approximately 6 months in 2022 during the height of the catalytic converter thefts that were occurring in Lancaster as well as Palmdale and the outlying areas. So just as a basis, a lot of people actually don't know what a catalytic converter is. It is actually an emissions scrubbing device that was part of all emission systems on diesels from 1990 and gasoline engines from 1975. If you have a fuel cell vehicle or an electric vehicle, they do not have them, as they don't have the emissions that these gasoline or diesel vehicles have. And catalytic converters break down toxic car exhaust into water, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. There's a diagram here on the right-hand side, and what we especially are looking at is this honeycomb structure on the inside of the catalytic converters. That is what thieves were looking for, is this honeycomb structure. The reason why they're looking at this honeycomb structure is because of what is inside that honeycomb structure. It is actually, while it is, I characterize it as a scrubbing device, it is actually a chemical reaction. There are precious metals in that honeycomb structure. And as the car heats up between about 300 and 420 degrees, this chemical reaction starts. And without this device, your car is not passing smog. So there are 3 main precious metals in this honeycomb structure. It is platinum, rhodium, and palladium. Platinum, I think most of us are familiar with, especially if you have purchased an engagement ring or a wedding band. There's about 3 to 7 grams of platinum inside this honeycomb structure. There's about 1 to 2 grams of rhodium, and then 2 to 7 grams of palladium. And I've got the prices here per gram. And if you want to picture what a gram looks like, your sweet and low packet is about a gram. And as you can see, platinum and palladium, which is what we're familiar with more as jewelry and other things, is actually the cheapest component. That rhodium is $435 per gram, per sweet and low packet. So my Prius has one of these catalytic converters on it. If you have an F-250 or an F-350 truck, you might have 3 to 4 catalytic converters in your car. So if you are talking about the lowest end of these 3 precious metals, you're talking about $593. If you're talking about the high end of the quantities, you're looking at $1,393 worth of precious metals in that honeycomb structure. That's why these things are being stolen. The other thing that makes them very easy and attractive for thieves is they are very easy to access. When you are talking about your Honda Civic, your Toyota Prius, the Prius actually is the #1 stolen catalytic converter because it is the most valuable catalytic converter. It's also very efficient in scrubbing your smog emissions. I had to have my catalytic converter replaced on my Prius, not because it was stolen, thankfully, but it was $3,310 for the part. And where it comes to where, you know, this council is probably very concerned as well for its constituents, not only is that a lot of money, but when I had mine replaced in August of 2022, I got the last one. Mine came from San Francisco. I have victims on my cases that go without their vehicles for 6 months waiting for parts. And so if you have a single mom with one car, she doesn't have a car for 6 months. So it's a real significant issue here in the Antelope Valley.
If I may,
Yes.
do we actually impound those cars or keep them in a tow yard? Or are these cars still available to this, as this example we're using, this single-family mom? Does she still have access to her vehicle and
She
able
has-
to drive it?
She has access to her vehicle. However, if you drive a car without a catalytic converter, it not only can cause damage to the actual vehicle, so you're actually adding, you know, insult to injury, so to speak, because you can actually further damage the vehicle by running without this emissions, on top of, you know, the issue that it's going to be a gross polluter. But also, depending upon what type of vehicle, your catalytic converter sits usually right underneath the driver's seat. And so those emissions, which are 300 to 420 degrees, are now coming out underneath the driver of the vehicle. And if there is any crack or any issue with the floorboard or the firewall, those toxic emissions can end up in the passenger compartment. So it is not a safe thing to drive. Can you? Absolutely. Are you going to hear that car coming from 3 to 4 blocks away? Absolutely. But the vehicles do stay with the owners because it is their property, and there's no, I don't think, a legal reason to impound or tow those vehicles unless they are abandoned or otherwise, which I will go into because there's another ancillary issue.
If I may,
Yes.
again, I apologize. How many of these, again, this example, this single mom, do we really think they're not driving this vehicle?
Many of the victims that I have had in my personal cases have their vehicles at the dealership, waiting for a part. Some of them have rented cars. A lot of insurance companies will cover 30 days worth of rental. I've had victims borrow cars. At least my victims that I have dealt with are not driving their cars because they do not want to cause further damage because they can't afford that.
Maybe I'll make this a little more clear. You can agree, I think, that there are most certainly people that do not either have the finances or the ability to get another car, but they still need to travel. They still need to take their kids to school. They still need to go to work. I think we can agree that there are constituents that are still driving these vehicles without a catalytic converter.
I'm sure there are. There's no way that there's no one.
And and because of this issue, not only do we have a crime issue, but we also have an issue that without these converters, we are putting the occupants of that vehicle in some rather significant danger.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So just so you know, and this is another reason why these are very sought after. As I said, they're very easy to steal as they are underneath the vehicle. This is everything you need in order to steal a catalytic converter quickly. A Sawzall, blades, and a floor jack. So if you were to go out to Home Depot, Harbor Freight, something like that, and purchase these 3 legally, you're at $250.
Question, but I am assuming that for an F-250 truck, you don't even need the jack.
You don't. You can climb right underneath. and that's the benefit to these large trucks is they have multiple catalytic converters and they're so high off the ground, you have plenty of room to be able to maneuver. When we, as part of the task force, this is basically what we refer to as the cat thieves. And we refer to catalytic converters as cats, but this is the cat thieves toolkit. We would find the sawzalls. The blades would actually be upside down. So normally the sawzall blade is pointed with the teeth down. It would actually be pointed teeth up. So you don't even have the inconvenience of having to hold the tool upside down. And then you had a floor jack that can raise a car in seconds for those Priuses and those Civics, because those are the more, those were very desirable catalytic converters. So we would find thieves very, very frequently here in Lancaster as well as Palmdale with the toolkit in their vehicle, either on their way to stealing catalytic converters, or we would find them with catalytic converters already cut inside of their vehicles. And this is actually a series of 4 videos. These are high-def videos. These were actually part of the national news when in April of 2022, there was a woman shot in North Hollywood twice for theft of a catalytic converter because she interrupted them. These sets of 4 videos are going to show you exactly how fast a catalytic converter can be stolen from, I believe that was a Honda. The reason I'm bringing this up at the Lancaster city is that the Top Cat task force actually apprehended and is part of the current open criminal process against the individuals in these videos. They were involved in numerous crimes in Lancaster as well as Palmdale, where they were ultimately apprehended on April 27th of 2022. So some of the individuals that you're going to see are currently pending arraignment on the information at the Antelope Valley Courthouse.
Was this in the middle of the night? Or?
This was at 2:59 a.m. And that's the end of the homeowner's ring video that we have. In total, it took them 84 seconds to steal that catalytic converter. You watch them pull out that floor jack. You watch them insert a blade into the sawzall, which took more time. There were 6 individuals in 2 vehicles. You had the drivers in each vehicle. You had the front individuals who you have a jack guy from one car, you have a cutter from the second car, and then there's a 3rd individual in each car that keeps an eye out for police. This crew took 5 jurisdictions to catch. This was our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Top Cat team. This was the Simi Valley Police Department. This was LAPD North Hollywood. This was Burbank Police Department. This was Oceanside Police Department.
Is it normal in these cases, most of the times, I'm assuming they are carrying a weapon?
It depends. And so I will go a little bit out of order, but there are 3 categories of catalytic converter thieves that we've run across as part of the task force. We have our single individuals that are they're doing this all by themselves. And most of the time what they're doing, they're usually not armed, they're stealing the car, driving it to the desert, and that way they have time to jack the car up, to cut the catalytic converter and leave with it. The person wakes up in the morning, their entire car is gone, and then by the time the car is found, the catalytic converter has already transferred hands 2 or 3 times. And so those are your solo kind of suspects or defendants. We have teams where you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 people that are working together. They may not need to steal the vehicle because they have enough people involved that they can steal it right in place and leave the car. And as you saw on this video, it isn't until a minute in that you have a sound loud enough that might wake up the homeowner, because that Sawzall is loud. But it's the last portion of what they're doing. Everything else is near silent. And then you have organized crime, which is what this group is, where they are highly sophisticated. They were involved in catalytic converter thefts from multiple counties, and they would move throughout those counties in the manner that they chose. They had lists of addresses because someone scoped them out earlier to, this is where these cars are, this is the list for you to steal tonight. They would do that, and then they would meet a third party at an empty parking lot and transfer everything they stole that night, and everyone would be paid. So the last group is very likely to be armed with deadly weapons. This particular group of individuals did shoot one woman through her kitchen window. She was hit once in the arm and once in the chest. She has a bullet embedded in her back. She testified at the preliminary hearing. This same crew also held a family at gunpoint when their car alarm went off and they came down fast enough to see them. They ordered one individual back into his house at gunpoint while one of them was taking the metal handle for the floor jack and banging it on the ground, threatening to kill them. So when you're talking about your solos, their job is they want to get into your car, steal your car, take it to the desert, and do what they want to do. When you're talking about these groups and these very organized groups, you're talking about people that are very likely armed. And they were armed in Lancaster when they stole a G37 at gunpoint at a gas station because they normally work in dual vehicle capacities. They usually have 2 cars. One of their cars broke down on the freeway on their way here. So they went into Lancaster and saw someone with a modified Infiniti sedan, and they pointed a gun at him, threatened to kill him, and took his car. And then most likely proceeded to steal some catalytic converters now that they had their set of vehicles.
Wow.
So let me go over the Top Cat task force. It consisted of 2 units of investigators, one here at the Lancaster station. It was 1 detective and 2 deputies. There was a matching set, as I like to say, at Palmdale Station. I was the assigned deputy district attorney that handled all of the prosecutions and cases that came from the task force. I was also present for meetings, especially, for example, like this on the videos. They were caught at 4 a.m. In Palmdale. The 5 jurisdictions all sent detectives up here to the Antelope Valley. Our detectives from Lancaster came down. We had a meeting around the lunch hour to figure out, because with the scope of something like this, we want to make sure that we work together between law enforcement as well as my office to figure out what we have, what needs to be charged, and how the case needs to be handled appropriately. Because if you have someone that is committing violent acts such as this, you're not going to treat that case the same as someone who's found in a stolen vehicle with 1 catalytic converter and has no criminal history. So the appropriate resources need to be taken together. I think that with this larger case, I think the task force and I spent 2 solid days working on the filings, figuring out the scope, figuring out what cases can be brought up to try together, because in the ultimate goal is a successful prosecution, at least on my end. And so it's going to be, what does the jury need to hear? How can we inform the jury of the full scope and magnitude of what is going on and what these individuals and their involvement. We
Real-
also,
Real quick, are we helping the victims of this with restitution at all?
so restitution comes upon the conviction. And so I have, at least with every case that we have located a victim, yes, restitution is definitely there. Whether or not a defendant can pay is a whole nother issue. But yes, for example, on the case that is pending currently, we have 13 known victims. I have restitution documents for all of them. I try to make sure that with all of my cases, I do as much investigation on the front end, because with our workloads right now, we don't often have time to do additional investigation afterwards. So yes, we are assisting them with restitution where we can, counseling services for the woman that was shot, for the individuals that were held at gunpoint. I know that we have an amazing victim service representatives at the AV courthouse, and they really do go above and beyond to make sure that victims receive whatever support that we can give them. And then because there were only 6 deputies across all of the Antelope Valley, we used other resources from the Sheriff's Department, like the TRAP team, which is the Targeted Regional Auto Theft Task Force that is actually throughout the state. The task force here in Lancaster and Palmdale did a large number of search warrants because not only do we have to catch the individuals that are actually cutting the catalytic converters, but they are going to other individuals who are then packaging them and taking them to commercial recyclers, because these items are incredibly toxic to take apart. There's one recycling location in Anaheim that is just a hazmat facility to end all hazmat facilities. It is incredibly toxic. This is a search warrant that was executed by the Lancaster. It was an investigation done here in Lancaster by the detectives here at the Lancaster station, but executed including TRAP as well as the Palmdale deputies because of this scale. This was an individual that was accepting catalytic converters using a family tire shop as, for lack of a better word, a front. There were 41 catalytic converters located on the site, 13 firearms, $10,000 in cash, and 2 recently purchased trailers with the tags still on them, each worth about $5,000. And this person had no prior criminal history. They basically would accept these catalytic converters. When he had approximately 20 of them available, he would call someone from down in LA who would come up and pay him $5,000 in cash for what he had. And so this is the money that is involved in these thefts. And this person did receive a criminal conviction, felony criminal conviction. The shop that this was happening out of was shut down. The catalytic converters were forfeited, the guns were forfeited, the cash was forfeited. And so this location was taken down. However, as you probably want to know next, isn't there another one that probably took its place? The task force was around for 6 months. They hit 5 of these locations. There was a prior image that I showed where they seized 86 at one time. It was a very large problem. It is still a problem.
Who's the one that they're taking it to? Who are those individuals? I mean, we're shutting down these facilities, but from there, they're going to somebody else.
Correct.
So they would be the top ticket that you're looking for, I would assume.
Yes, and the plan prior to the task force being shut down is part of all dispositions on all criminal cases that I had is I ordered and requested that the court forfeit all of the catalytic converters we seized to the task force, and hoping to start hitting the next level up, because we need catalytic converters to sell. It's kind of, this is kind of like an undercover drug buy.
Yeah.
You can substitute any narcotic for basically what we're doing
Right.
here. And that was the goal, is to get enough to be able to go through to the next level. But the task force operated for only 6 months, and we just didn't have enough time.
Where was the funding from for the task force?
My understanding is it was a grant
Grant.
that the Lancaster Sheriff's Department obtained, and that money ran out. And then with catalytic converter theft, the other thing that you probably kind of want to know is what other things are involved, because it's not just catalytic converters. A lot of things that we saw was receiving stolen property, which are the catalytic converters, grand theft, those individuals taking the whole vehicles and dumping them in the desert. We had chop shops, identity theft, because if they stole your car and you left your debit card, I'm going to let you guess as to what happened to your debit card. As I said, we had three main common methods of execution, and just so that everyone is aware, the sentencing ranges that are on completed cases as of right now is there were individuals, especially on solo thieves, that were doing this because it was easy money to get, usually methamphetamine and fentanyl. And so that want for their next fix is what led those particular individuals to doing what they're doing. We have a very robust drug court in our building. I used to actually run that court, and they would complete a year to a year and a half of drug treatment to earn probation in lieu of a jail sentence, all the way up to, we have a completed case, a couple, where the individuals are currently serving 8-year state prison sentences. The one that is still pending, that you saw the video up, their maximum exposure is approximately 30 years in state prison as a result of the shootings, the people being held at gunpoint, all of the other things that were associated with this emboldened type of organized crime teams.
Is 8 years pretty much the maximum, though, if there's no one harmed and there's not a weapon used?
If there is no weapon used, and it's a very difficult question to ask, because there's a lot of variables that go into felony sentencing. It's like a 4-day class at 8 hours a day. But for example, if you have a catalytic converter thief that has no prior criminal history, he is a drug addict that is stealing catalytic converters to buy drugs, and they don't have a criminal history, his maximum for that one catalytic converter is 3 years in county jail at 50%.
And that's because of the value?
That is because of value, yes. And that was one thing that we had to be able to establish with the task force, is it took a lot of research, because a lot of defense arguments were, I can buy a used catalytic converter for $200 at the muffler shop. I can buy one online for $300. But my catalytic converter on my car came with my car. It is a Toyota catalytic converter. It is a Honda catalytic converter. It works well. Catalytic converters don't they don't burn out till 250,000 miles before you have to replace them. They should be valued at what they are on my car.
Right.
And not what I can get for them on Amazon or on some muffler shop at the corner. And so that was a hurdle that we had to get over legally as it relates to the successful prosecution.
Those 3 years at 50%, how much time are they doing then after that 50%? Are they doing less than that?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, that's kind of.
They are.
So to be realistic, if someone without a prior record were convicted of a catalytic converter theft, they probably wouldn't spend any time.
They would spend some time. I will tell you that my experience and the way that I operate as a DA is for those individuals that don't have a criminal history, that are solo thieves, that are most likely doing something because of substance use, I want them in drug court for the year to year and a half of treatment for them to earn probation, because that is the most likely method that we're going to have to stop them from reoffending if we target the underlying issue. So for those individuals, my first question to a lot of their defense attorney is, do they want to do drug court? If they don't, then it's a county jail sentence, and we are where we are, and they can probably do the math better than I can.
Has Mr. Gascon shown any zeal in prosecuting these cases?
You don't know the answer to that, huh?
Can you ask me that after 4:30?
She's being
I
televised
have-
at the moment, Dr.
Let me
Brown.
ask I think, a more generalized question, because you mentioned that there are multi-agencies, multi-jurisdictions, and counties involved. I think you mentioned Simi Valley and also, did San Bernardino? Or was
This is Simi Valley, LAP, so as to counties.
Yeah.
That particular crew, I know, operated between Santa Barbara and near the Mexico border.
Do you know, so you mentioned the, essentially 3 years, year and a half, but many are diverted through drug court. What would the comparative sentence and charges be in a different county?
It honestly, it depends on which county. And at least as it relates to the prosecutions here in the Antelope Valley, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. I was selected by the detectives to be the DA assigned. They actually called me on a weekend. I do very much gravitate towards quality of life crimes because it is the biggest impact on a day-to-day basis for individuals. And I will say that defense attorneys definitely didn't say I was nice about these cases.
Okay.
They were prosecuted as heavily as I could prosecute them because when we catch them with one catalytic converter, there's a lot that we didn't catch, and that's the reality of this, because we have to have the patrol deputies out there making the observations in order to see what is going on and to be observant on their traffic stops. If they pull somebody over because their registration's expired, and they look in the back seat and see, you know, a Sawzall with an upside down blade, extra blades and a floor jack, they need to be able to recognize that that is what's going on. And so in other counties, many of these things are filed as misdemeanors. And prior to the task force, one of the reasons why it was started is because they were being filed as misdemeanors around here as well, because there was that issue as to value, and a lot of times we don't catch them in the act. We just have a random catalytic converter sitting in a back seat. And so there's a wide range of things. If I can have enough evidence to show that they actually stole the catalytic converter, I can charge grand theft based on value. If I can't, if there's no saw, for example, but they have a number of catalytic converters, all I might be able to charge is receiving stolen property. As a felony, it's the same triad in meaning sentence range, but it just depends on what I can prove based upon the observations that are made at the time.
Okay.
I may be getting ahead of your presentation, but what is the current numbers and status since the task force has been dismantled?
Catalytic converter thefts are back up. We, of course, are not being able to hit the locations that have probably popped up in receiving these catalytic converters from the actual thieves. And so while everything was going down and people were very vigilant about catalytic converters, and it was very much at the forefront of people's minds, it's going right back up because we just don't have that targeted team that is really working these cases. And in my office every afternoon about, hey, this is what's new. This is going to be an in custody for tomorrow. This is what's going on right now. This is what we're investigating right now. It took a good amount of effort by us seven to try to quell this. I mean, as a point of, I don't know if I want to say pride, when I had to replace my catalytic converter, it was in August, I didn't have a core fee, meaning Toyota didn't charge me a core fee like you would a battery if you replace your battery. I said, okay, well, great, I want my catalytic converter because I know it's worth about $800 used. I called every legal recycler in Lancaster, and they're like, yeah, we won't touch them. The sheriff's department is cracking down. We don't accept them, period.
I have a question in regards to, you just mentioned that used product, you're lucky to find one. But I know a number of victims in this town, and it was, a lot of victims in this town, but their financial status is all different. Some of them, they took care by the insurance, they don't pay 100%, that. And some of them, they'll be able to pay out of their pocket. but a lot of them, because of the value is so high, and they've been all provide the repair shop aftermarket product, you know?
Correct.
So if the aftermarket product is a used one, or if there is actually aftermarket product? Because I know after they install it, they pass a small fine.
Correct. It all depends. I mean, there are, I think with everything, there are different qualities of aftermarket products. You have very reputable national sellers of aftermarket catalytic converters like MagnaFlow, and you will pass smog. There is, though, a difference between when you're looking at the internals of those catalytic converters. There is a difference between OEM that's put on at the factory as well as afterwards. For example, if you have an aftermarket catalytic converter welded on, and the weld is actually much more likely to break than if the entire piece is replaced, for example, on the Prius. I'm sadly very familiar with this. Everything from the exhaust manifold to the muffler is one piece. So there's no welds that can break. So, you know, will it pass smog? Yes. Most of them, some of them will. Some of them will not right out of the box. Getting a used catalytic converter, you have no idea how old that catalytic converter is or what the vehicle came from. And so you don't know what life is left on that catalytic converter because they do wear out, so to speak. So there are definitely stopgap measures where someone doesn't have, I think the cheapest OEM catalytic converter that I have prices on is about $1,400. The most expensive OEM catalytic converter that I have run into is $6,000. That was on an RV. But there are stopgap measures. However, I mean, the ultimate measure is to stop it.
Even I see the bumper stickers on freeway, my catalytic converter is an aftermarket product, you know?
And actually, as you mentioned, bumper stickers, one thing I didn't mention as it relates to the task force is we actually did a number of etching events here in Lancaster. We did a couple in Palmdale, and basically the detectives, the officers, and I spent a lot of hours underneath cars on the weekends etching the last 4 to 8 of a VIN number on these catalytic converters, and the detective out of Lancaster Station actually put together a stencil, and we used high temperature enamel spray paint, like bold green, to spray paint after the the VIN number was etched into the catalytic converter, so that at least if someone climbed underneath that car, they would know it was etched, that we've looked at it, and it's kind of a deterrent that we attempted as part of our attempts to do something more than just prosecuting it after it happened and catching the thieves after it happened. So we did that for a couple of months while the task force was in operation.
How would you say the success on that was?
There's no real way to know. I mean, I will say this. The last one that I did, which I think was in February or March of 22, it was at the Chevy dealership here in Lancaster, and it was at Camacho and Palmdale. All of us were there for about 5 hours, and we etched, I'm going to say each location probably etched between about 200 and 250 cars. So the public definitely showed up. There were lines for blocks in order to take care of this free service that we attempted to provide. And at least as far as deterrent effect, we haven't recovered any catalytic converters that are etched with the VIN numbers so that we could return them to the owner, which is the big thing, is there's no numbers on these things. We can't return them once we find them. I wish we could. We have I think we seized between 300 and 400 catalytic converters in 6 months.
With this such an epidemic, why isn't the industry etching numbers? That seemed like it'd be an easy fix to do at manufacturing.
There's easier fixes than that, but we'll get there in a second, I'm sure.
So there's definitely legislation that has come up in the state of California to require that the VIN numbers are etched. Other manufacturers in like Honda and Toyota have started putting skid plates over the catalytic converters underneath the vehicles. It was kind of nice, actually, to have a car roll over the bay where we were doing the etching. I'm like, oh, there's a skid plate. We can't even access the catalytic converter. So that definitely helps. Since someone brought up my boss, he wrote a letter that published in the newspaper asking for the manufacturers to make them harder to steal. That happened. And so there are cages that can be welded around catalytic converters. They cost the consumer around $300 or $400. I know someone that had one welded after her catalytic converter was stolen up in Sacramento on a weekend excursion into the state of California from Oregon. And it was basically rebar that was molded in such a manner to cut a cage. However, if you get a battery-powered angle grinder and add that to your Sawzall toolkit, that is also gone. And there's going to be more damage to your car because they're going to cut through those welds as well. So there's definitely stopgap measures, and there's things that we have tried to do to lower the amount of theft here in Lancaster. But until the values of these metals go down, they're going to be desirable. Electric vehicles don't have catalytic converters, so everybody with a Tesla and a Volt is safe. I think in California we'll eventually get there, but dealing with this right now.
Yeah. You earlier mentioned that you need to demonstrate the value in order to prosecute as a felony.
Yes.
Well, roughly, I mean, is that something that's fairly common in your cases that come to your desk, or do most of them, roughly how many fail to meet that felony value standard?
So the aftermarkets, of course, will fail.
Okay.
And so what I learned as part of doing this is looking at hundreds of recovered catalytic converters. The ones that are aftermarket, they will actually have a code. I think it's D93, something like that. I had to look it up, and basically there was a California compliance law that was passed in 1983 to allow for CARB compliant aftermarket catalytic converters. And so the MagnaFlows, the aftermarkets, are stamped with that number to show that they are California CARB compliant. Mm-hmm. And so those I can very easily indicate is a misdemeanor versus when I see the Toyota logos, the Honda logos. Mm-hmm. I have hundreds of images so that we can try to compare what was seized to the various manufacturers. Everyone here at the Lancaster Auto Mall has been beyond helpful in helping me establish value, helping me identify catalytic converters. I was on a first-name basis with a lot of parts managers, as were the detectives who would go out and establish these relationships with the dealerships, let them know that we're trying to do this. They allowed us to use the bays in order to do the etching events. There was a lot of support from the Lancaster businesses in helping with this.
If you catch someone and it's at that misdemeanor level, under Mr. Gascon's directives, what are you able to do?
It depends upon their criminal history. If they have no criminal history, the directives would suggest diversion. I have to be honest, I kind of stopped reading them. So
It's understandable.
I will say, and then if they have priors, then we can ask for pleas to that, place them on summary probation, which the legislator has limited now to 12 months. We used to have 3 months or 3 years of summary probation. It is now 1 year of summary probation, and various terms and conditions. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to say I'm being hampered, but there's kind of two sets of laws that I have to work with. There's what's printed in the penal code. There's the directives as well. I actually don't mind misdemeanors. Actually, the way that sentencing works, I can actually increase sentences consecutively with misdemeanors if there's a felony. And so part of this job has been being creative.
Okay. But so you're saying you are able to prosecute misdemeanors?
I can prosecute misdemeanors. I do prosecute misdemeanors.
Okay.
The misdemeanor ones, again, are usually the solo thieves with the drug issues. So those I try to address the underlying issues to prevent it. When we're talking about the teams or the organized groups, we're not talking misdemeanors. They're not targeting aftermarket cars. It's not worth their time.
So question, with this task force, it sounds like it was a success, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Because, you know, we've seen after that it's raised. 6 months is not a long time.
No.
With the grant, is this something that could be reapplied for? How do we get the task force going back? What's needed to do that?
Funding, I get paid one way or the other. I am more than happy to prosecute catalytic converter thieves. I'm more than happy to prosecute. I also prosecute all the animal cruelty in the Antelope Valley, as well, on top of my trial assignments. So my salary is covered. I think it was more the law enforcement time, because they have to pull people off of other cases in order to be able to handle these. And so I don't want to necessarily pass the buck, but that could go to that man.
Well, with that said,
I can actually address that. It was technically not a grant that we used. We shifted city-funded resources from the LANCAP team and detective resources from the station that are overhead items to form the task force. We had the idea of doing it and presented it to the city manager. It was before Director Armerlin came on board that we started running it. We presented it to the city manager's office, and he said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Yes, you can move those resources temporarily. Our plan was to have the task force up and running as a proof of concept and get other stations and other city contracts to buy in and have a larger deployment. But the state of the department's staffing right now is what caused us to have to fold up the task force. We needed to address the other issues that the LANCAP items are intended to be addressing, and we didn't have the personnel to redirect in that area.
so do we feel like this is something that we're going to bring back and give you the resources for? Is that a city question?
We would
or-
most definitely bring it back if we had dedicated funding for it and we could shift personnel to do it.
How much funding are we talking about,
How much
Cap?
fun, yeah.
I don't have an answer for that right now. I'd have to work something up and make a proposal for that. But currently, the investigations that are being done and being directed that are not, one-off, single thief arrests are being handled by the Task Force for Regional Auto Theft Prevention. They've started to absorb it is not originally within their mandate by the state of California. They cover auto theft specifically, but because the catalytic converter plague, if you will, is everywhere in the state, they have been asked to start picking up some of those cases because it's so closely related to auto theft in general. They don't usually do component theft investigations, but because there were so many cars, we were actually through a lot of the work of the task force, we were able to prove that there were so many stolen cars that were only being stolen so this one component could be taken, that they're now looking at those cases through the task force. But they are extremely underfunded, and they have a gigantic area to cover. They cover the entire state. We only have a few teams within the county of Los Angeles. If we could have some kind of committed funding, not just from the city of Lancaster. I would be hesitant to say, yeah, we can take this on, because now we actually do know the scope of the problem. The investigators were briefing me regularly about their path of their investigation, and I liken the pathway of the larger crime to a reverse of the way that illegal narcotics and counterfeit items are coming into this country. These products that are being stolen and taken and removed from our country are taking that same pathway back. So the network is there to bring illegal items in. They're using that same network to take our stolen catalytic converters and precious metals out of the country. So it's a larger problem. We barely scratched the surface of it. It was a ton of work that went into it. And I know there's some members of the commission that participated in that and helping us get some of the etching events done. The community, I know, responded well to those etching events. It gave them a sense of, hey, someone's actually addressing this problem, and this is what we can do to make it safe. the ideas that came out of the folks that were on the task force, and that's a pretty small task force actually, but the ideas that came out of it, the high temp paint, the stenciling, the even just the engraving part on the catalytic converters were great problem solving techniques. And actually, I do believe we did not ever have a reported theft of one of our vehicles that was etched.
What did it cost us, what did it cost the grant to do that etching? Per car?
We used personnel on their regular time, and if we had some overtime issues, we paid them overtime. But it was a public-private collaboration, the businesses, the auto dealers. They gave us the space to do it. They helped us with some personnel, and then the task force personnel actually went and did the etchings.
Okay, so outside the donations from constituents and, community businesses, it only cost us man-hour.
Yes.
And can we estimate how much per car?
I don't have that number, but I could report back on that to the commission.
Do we have a guesstimate?
I don't, no.
Okay. But it's rather minuscule, it seems, if it's just man-hours, and it can't be, how long does it take to etch a vehicle?
Well, the etching events themselves, we might have a figure on that I could report back on quickly, but they're one-day operations. There was a bit of advertising involved in it, and then there's one-day operations with, I would say it was in the less than $10,000 range per event.
So 250 cars for less than 10 grand were able to be etched.
On average.
Mr. Cottle, is that something we can look into with whatever, we've got a bunch of city funds. Is that something we can look into for Lancaster residents the same way we did Clear Choice? Same way we've done like multiple events for other things like this. Is that something we can look into?
Absolutely.
And
With your direction through Rod, we'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, Rod, if we can look into something like that just to see what it would cost, because it sounds to me it would be most certainly cost effective if we were to do something like that over all of the time and energy and money spent to let it happen, in the first place.
You got it, absolutely. We'll get something figured out.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, like you said, you were being creative on how to deal with these convictions. Mm-hmm. Have we looked into the idea of conspiracy to, commit manslaughter? Because, and the reason I say, I thought it funny too when I first said it in my head. Go ahead.
It's not, and I think, are you referring to the case that happened in Palmdale?
Well, obviously that's manslaughter. I'm talking about you find these individuals, you find these perpetrators, they have 1 to 40 catalytic converters in their possession. Well, we talked about before that not having a catalytic converter on your vehicle is extremely dangerous, not only due to the pollution to the environment, but to the people in the vehicle. Well, if you steal someone's catalytic converter and they are still having to drive that vehicle, we are now putting them at risk for death. You can make an argument that it's conspiracy to commit manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter.
So, is it legally possible? I think that you'd have to have a very specific set of circumstances for that to be possible. So with conspiracy, you need an agreement with 2 or more individuals, as well as an overt act in order to further that conspiracy. With regards to the manslaughter portion of that, that would be much more difficult as I don't know, it would have to go to intent, what these individuals knew, if they knew that this was possible, if that person may have possibly driven. With theft, for example, the 487s, a part of, for example, being creative. When we caught the crew that was here in the Antelope Valley, the one that carjacked in Lancaster and the one that was caught in Palmdale, they had 7 catalytic converters in their trunk. We have no idea who they took them from, because a lot of people right now are not reporting the thefts. They feel as though it's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to get it back. I am a victim, and I'm going to write this off and move about my life. And so they're not reporting that. So those I can charge as John Doe victims based upon the circumstances in which they were caught and how that crew operated. When you're talking about manslaughter and the intents required, whether it be voluntary, involuntary, implied malice, actual malice, it would be very difficult. And I'm pretty creative. Ask my boss.
Believe it.
To charge something like conspiracy to commit manslaughter. However, conspiracy to commit the crimes amongst individuals is definitely something that we've looked at, so that when they have lookouts or they bring along a friend that knows what's going on but is not actively participating, we can of course charge them the same as the principal party under the conspiracy statutes. That there are still cases actually trickling in, even though the task force isn't around, because I do have the knowledge base. There are other cases that I'm taking. Anything with a catalytic converter, I'm basically just adding to my caseload, so that we can effectively try to prosecute these individuals. As it is this, the captain's absolutely right, it's a plague.
Well, yeah, agreed. But it's not for that individual, the single, right? Just got one catalytic converter and they're looking to get drugs. I completely agree with you. Drug courts are most certainly necessary. This is not a not a true crime. It's really you're doing it because you have a drug problem.
Correct.
Right? But for the other ones, for the ones that are truly causing problems, especially the organized crime, right? Even though they're purchasing 3 steps away, you can get them obviously on conspiracy. That's not difficult. But if we are able to somehow be able to charge somebody with vol man, in vol man, doesn't matter, right? Based on the idea that we know that it will hurt them or potentially kill an individual in the vehicle that doesn't have a catalytic converter, you would then be able to charge the top of these organized crime organized crime syndicates. You'd be able to charge the top of them with invol or vol man.
As I said, is it theoretically possible? Yes, there's a couple of problems with it that I foresee, especially because it is very difficult to track these catalytic converters as they run. One thing that the task force did see in the 6 months, because of the pressure that the task force placed on catalytic converter thieves in the Antelope Valley, is that as they were stealing the catalytic converters, they were actually removing the outer casings and actually just keeping the honeycomb structure on the inside to try to get rid of the outer casing that made it look like a catalytic converter. But is it absolutely possible? Yes, there is definitely organized crime involved in this theft, both street gangs as well as prison gangs. And that is based on, again, knowledge from the task force as it operated. And so if we were able to, put a case together, it's definitely something I wouldn't mind trying. I see some legal, like I said, issues with also the natural and probable consequences theory as the penal code has been changed, and how we can prosecute natural and probable consequences crimes as it relates to murder and attempted murder. But if I get that case, I'll definitely give it a shot.
Commissioner, or Chairman Mercy, is it possible, because of time, if we can maybe hold our questions off, let her finish her presentation?
Very good idea.
And continue? Okay.
And I was actually pretty much done. I was told I had about 15, 20 minutes. So that was an hour and 6 minutes ago. But I did actually pull the numbers yesterday evening, because I actually was curious as to what all we did in those 6 months. So there were 5 to 6 location search warrants for what we call brokers. So those are the individuals that are taking them from the individual thieves. That's like that tire shop where you had the image of all the catalytic converters, the firearms, the cash. We made about 25 larger arrests. This is on top of what the patrol deputies did, because especially the ones on graveyards did a really good job at being able to eyeball these cars and to figure out who was doing what. And once I would get the reports, if there was some additional education that they needed, they were all very open to getting the additional either information from myself or from the detectives, and the reports got better, the prosecutions were easier because of that additional education and training from the patrol officers. We recovered conservatively 300, 350 catalytic converters. And I think there's more. I think they were all forfeited to the sheriff's department. So if they're all sitting there if we wanted to do buys later, I think. I think they're taking up some space on pallets in the back. I did file 21 felony cases. Approximately half of them are multi-defendant, anywhere from 2 to 4 defendants working in concert. The smallest case is 1 count of receiving stolen property. The largest case is the one where you saw the videos that currently we finished the prelim. It took approximately 6 days of testimony over almost 6 months because of the COVID quarantine protocols that some of the defendants were on. We actually just finished. We're doing the arraignment on the information next week. There are 28 felony counts, including 6 violent felonies that occurred. And I'm actually going to be asking permission to add gun allegations to one of the counts that, because of information we received during the preliminary hearing. And so that's what we did in 6 months.
I have one last question, and I do apologize. This may be even a foolish question. After we charge and we have reached the end of each case, why can't we go sell those catalytic converters and use it for the task force? You get a bunch of money, you get all of that, right? Once it's done, use it.
We had that idea. The plan was, we have all of these forfeited catalytic converters. We were, like I said, hoping to go up the food chain and use them. And then when it was all said and done, to be able to allow the sheriff's department to recycle them legally and use the funds to do something for the community, or to, in some manner have some benefit of all of this disaster and heartache and time and frustration and everything else.
What happened? What did we decide?
The cases are not complete yet.
Correct.
So they're all evidence right now. So there's not really anything we can do with them until all the cases are complete. They're sitting down at Central Property in Whittier, taking up a lot of valuable space, actually.
So we don't actually have any completed cases.
Yeah, they're incomplete cases still, so they have to sit in evidence until the cases are completed. But we did have that similar idea. Actually, the task force came to us with that and said, hey, how do we get this done? Is there something we can do with all of these valuable items? So we have yet to explore that. And I honestly don't know what the legal ramifications behind converting that evidence to. We do on occasion sell items that are seized in criminal investigations. We do resell them. We would probably do it along those lines. But we're going to have to invest some time previous to that in trying to identify victims and return the items, which is extremely difficult to do because they're not marked. They're fairly untraceable, and we do have a ton of people that did not report the crimes before we could even move forward with recycling these products and returning the money.
But you guys already thought of it, okay.
Yeah.
Just cool.
There's definitely a difference between thinking about it all and being able to actually pull it all off.
What are the requirements of a recycler to accept a catalytic converter?
Well, I just might happen to know that. So a human being can absolutely legally recycle their catalytic converter. I tried and failed because no one around here will take them because of the pressure from the sheriff's department. But you do need to have your title. You need to have the catalytic converter. You need your driver's license. So, for example, when I was preparing to do this, I had proof that I had mine replaced. I had my $3,310 invoice from Toyota. Thankfully, my insurance covered it. But I had all of that. I had my driver's license. I had my title. They have to take pictures of you with the catalytic converter, with your driver's license, and so there are requirements under the Business and Professions Code that lays all of that out. I think the legislator did recently pass a misdemeanor statute for someone illegally accepting those. But again, it's baby steps. But that's the basic gist of how to legally recycle your catalytic converter.
Okay. So it's just a misdemeanor if they don't follow those rules now?
It's a misdemeanor. I did have an individual that, when you're dealing with receiving stolen property, it is based on each receiving. And so if for example, one of the I want to say the failings of the law when it comes to something as unique as this, because this problem didn't exist in the magnitude that it did 2 years ago. It really didn't, with the skyrocketing values. I want to say part of it might have been even the fact that you had so many people idle at the same time, because we kind of just stopped between 2020 and 2022. But if for the individual that had 41 catalytic converters, the ones with the guns and the cash, we can only do one receiving stolen property per receiving. So if we can't prove that he accepted 41 separate times, we can't charge 41 separate receiving stolen properties. And so with that one, every which way I looked, I could charge him only with one receiving stolen property, even though he had 41 catalytic converters, because I can't prove if he received them 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 5 at a time, unless I put a detective outside of that shop at 2 o'clock in the morning when he was accepting them for weeks on end to see how many he's getting and how many times. And that's a lot of man hours, and that's a lot of resources.
Yeah. Oh, so that might be something some legislative reps might be interested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your hard work on this project, you and all the deputies involved. And thank you for spending so much time talking with us
If
this
anyone
morning.
has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, because this is a property of life. This is a quality of life issue. It really, truly is. And the number of times I've had people that have had their car stolen for their cat, and it's in impound because the sheriff's department finds it, and they can't afford to get it out. It's heartbreaking. Eventually, we have so many of these victims, and it's just not fair.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, talk to these folks. Next up, we have another presentation, Drones as First Responders, Public Safety Director Armelin.
15 minutes or so here for you guys. Good morning, Commissioners. It's wonderful to be in front of you today, as always. And, one thing about this great city is it's all in your public safety department. We're always looking for ways to advance and use the best technology possible to deal with some of the issues and make our citizens as safe as possible and aid our sheriff's department in the tough job that they have to do. So today we want to speak with you briefly about a program we're looking at and considering bringing to the city, and that is drone as a first responder. We currently already use drones for several different things to aid us in the job we do at public safety. But this is something new that a few cities in Southern California are using, and using with great success. So, I'll tell you what, instead of trying to explain it, let me show you a video real fast that'll kind of help with what we're looking at.
Memorial Village's place, Becky.
What's the address? My last name is Titus, and we have someone in room. 415, can we launch Air 1? Drones in Westville. What is Air 1 seat? No signs of distress. Do we have any coverage in the backyard? 415 arriving. No signs of force entry. 415, we're clear. Sending drone back to 981.
So what we're talking about here is, simply put, having the ability to give our sheriff's department employees rapid air support and getting it up quickly, and being able to fly in some of the conditions that the helicopter is unable to do. We've already got one great system. The LEADS program has been outstanding in helping our deputies. And now we're looking at an additional program that, quite frankly, is less expensive, but it gives us the ability to be available for the deputies many hours up there. So we're excited about this. One of the things I love about that video is it shows you the system's capability to get to a call, and sometimes sensitive calls for service, get an evaluation of what that situation is and make a determination as to whether or not we need to send 8 deputy sheriffs to the call. Maybe we can limit that number, have them address other issues, and make that situation a little bit more comfortable to deal with. So I will tell you, although I have my little drone I fly around the neighborhood, I am not an expert. But I do have an expert that's working for me, so I'm going to have him come up and finish this presentation. Tim Bush.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tim. I'm a senior specialist for the Public Safety Department. I'm also a certified drone pilot for the past 5 years. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit of exciting technology that we hope can be beneficial for the safety of our community. So what are we talking about? Basically drones. They go by a couple names: UAS, UAV, quadcopters, but basically they're unmanned remote controlled tools that we can use to benefit the community. So the benefits, sorry, I'm not a public speaker, so this might be a little rough. All right, so in regards to public safety, we can do crowd safety, tactical operations, we can assist on warrants. For infrastructure, we can inspect buildings and structures. Disaster management, if there's a big, large earthquake, we can fly the drone, get a real-time view of what's actually going on. And everybody likes the drone shot, so they're great for media. Our current project or program consists of 2 drones. We've used them for a lot of projects in the past. I'm gonna share some of these projects. So these are some downtown events that we were able to get live footage of the scene. We're able to assess the crowd, see what the crowd's doing, and if there are any potential dangers. We're also able to fly at night above the fair and really see what's going on. It gave us a perspective that we weren't able to get with boots on the ground. You're able to just see so much more. Okay. One of our first projects, I think we did this in 2018, was a survey of a stockpile. This is the large hill that's located at H and 20th Street West. Public Works needed a volume of this stockpile. So we were able to throw a drone up in the air, map this area, and then get a measurement from that map. We then gave it to I guess it would be development services team, and their engineers worked with this information, and you're actually seeing the fill from this hill is being used to create the ramps that are going in on Avenue J. So we're also able to make some maps with our drones. There's some homeless encampments that were north of the courthouse near Avenue M and 5th Street. So we were able to fly the area, make a map of it, assess the roadways going into the homeless encampments. We were able to, so the circle A represents picture A. We were able to zoom in on that map and get a really clear image of what that encampment looks like. We could see what dangers may be present, what to expect on the approach, and possible concealment issues. Basically, we're able to provide a high level of situational awareness for the safety of our personnel. We also had our drones up during the multi-agency, large-scale illegal marijuana cultivation operation. These were those illegal grows way out in the desert. This is actually 2 different sites, but when you're on the ground, you can't they're so big and there's so much vegetation or buildings around you, you can't see what's really going on. Having the drone up in the air, we could assess the roadways coming and going and see what kind of traffic was on these roads. And if they were a danger, we had a little bit of warning. So I'm going to go over the DFR program and some of the equipment that we're interested in using for it. We went and toured Beverly Hills and Santa Monica PD. They're using this drone. They say it's their favorite drone. And this drone's able to fly in severe winds, the winds that we have out here. I actually looked at a history of the winds out here. Our average wind is 18. Yeah, we get 70 miles an hour winds. We're not going to be able to fly a drone in that. But all the temperatures that we have out here, we could fly in. And we have a 41-minute flight time per battery. It takes about a minute to bring the drone down, swap the battery out, and get this drone back up in the air. So you actually have the ability to be up in the air continuously. Beverly Hills actually swapped out a battery while we were there, and it was amazing how fast they were doing it. The other thing that this drone provides is you can get some accessories for it. Beverly Hills really liked the megaphone. They were able to do call outs to people and crowds and give them direction. They really liked the megaphone on the drone versus the helicopter because they were able to, the noise did not get washed out in the prop wash. And they were able to just be over, whoever they were trying to address and speak to them. It also has a spotlight. This spotlight, I don't have specs on the brightness of it, but both police departments describe it as the bat signal. It's bright. This is an example of the drone's zoom capability. We're 1,500 feet away where that image is taken. Inside that orange circle is a car. And from where that drone is, it could zoom in, see the make, model, and the license plate of the car. I mean, I could barely see it with my eyes. This drone also has FLIR and thermal capabilities. You can see that most of the fire and the hot spots are hidden by the smoke. It's obstructed. With this data, we can live stream this data to people on the ground and first responders. They can have this information. They could see where the hot spot is and address the situation, have the data to address the situation. This provides a high level of safety for our personnel. On the top, let me see if I could do the pointer here. So this is another example of the FLIR capability and thermal. That person's actually behind a tree and you're able to see the person. This is at pitch dark. So you could see what's going on there. And it's great for search and rescue missions. The bottom one's a little hard to see, but that's an example of the spotlight capability. That's an entire multi-story building being illuminated by the spotlight. So let's see. So that's the spotlight right there. Or the bat signal, as some of the deputies have been referring to this as. We're also looking at the first-person view drones and their capabilities. So you can see she's wearing goggles. It's kind of like a VR headset where you have the drone's cameras on your field of vision, and you're able to operate the drone in more tight situations because it's basically like your head is floating around the room. This allows the inspections of high danger areas, buildings, or cars. I think it was Santa Monica or Beverly Hills that mentioned that they were using it to clear out vehicles so that they didn't have to put the deputies up in that situation. So it can go in some really tight situations. This is a video showing it going into a house. You can see there's obstructions all the way around it, up on top and bottom. And, I wouldn't want to be walking into the house. But we're able to send drones in areas that we wouldn't want to send people. Okay. So I did a little run-up on the startup costs. The two drones, obviously the $15,000 is the big drone with the thermal and everything, $3,000 for the smaller first-person view drone. And then the case. The case is important because that allows us to stream the information to the decision makers. We can basically send out a text message with a URL link. They can click on that message and have a live video feed of what's going on. It's the same technology that, you know, reporters are using on the red carpet during like the Oscars. So that case is $41,530, and we're also looking at a $10,000 for airspace authorizations. We're looking to get currently 90% of the airspace in Lancaster is navigable, but there is 10% that is, you know, a little harder to fly in. You just need to get the right waivers. Sorry, my mouth is completely dry here. So 10% we would need a waiver for. Thanks. So 10% we would need a waiver for, and that's what we're looking at with the 10,000 to get these authorizations. Okay, so we're contracting with the specialist to help us get those authorizations. So total startup cost, you're looking at about $70,000. Also ran up some quick numbers for a year. Maintenance on these drones, there's not a lot, but say we have to replace any props or a battery, you're looking at $1,500 maybe. Personnel, we spec'd out a full-time employee and a part-time visual observer. The visual observer is there as a safety measure to make sure that the airspace around the quadcopter drone is clear, so that we're not getting in a sheriff helicopter's way, or that there's no manned aircraft is in danger of our operations. The software contracts encompasses a program to manage the fleet and also for the streaming services. And total per year, we're figuring out about $156,000. Okay, that is my presentation. Thank you, guys. I hope it was educational.
Couple questions?
Yeah, a couple questions.
Of course.
I know you don't want any part of this, but
I'm trying to run off here, guys.
just so you know.
For sake of ease, let's start at this end and work our way.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. You know, I'm pretty sure you guys all figured it out, but I got a little bit confused. Because I think it's one or two meetings before Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown, or Commissioner at the end, and brought it up and to our chief, and there is drone options. You remember that, right? Yeah. And your answer was flying drones in this area, so many restrictions because we have a military bases, we have an airport, and fairground, and you mentioned so and on, and all of a sudden, and here's the drones, you know? So.
Well, actually, Commissioner, that wasn't my response. I think Archie was explaining that there's restrictions. There are restricted airspaces, and what Tim is talking about is we have the capability to get in certain certifications that will allow us to fly in those airspaces. He has actually gotten approval to fly in, I think it was 42's airspace before.
So the map for the homeless, that's actually what is considered a zero grid. You're not supposed to fly there. I was able to get a waiver and be able to fly there within about a month. With the authorizations that we're looking at getting a COA, which is a certificate of authorization for a government entity. Once we get that COA, even if we don't have complete access to all of the zero grids, and like I said, we can immediately fly in 90% of Lancaster. That 10% is the issue. And it's Plant 42 that's, they've got a big zero grid around them. So once we get a COA, if there's an emergent situation, say it's on Sierra Highway and Avenue M, we can apply for what's called a SGI, which is a special government interest waiver. And we're supposed to be able to call on the phone and say, hey, we got a large, say a train train derailment with hazardous material. We got to see what's going on here. We can get that waiver within an hour, and we could be over that area. So
I mean,
How long would that waiver last?
during the event, during the emergency.
I mean, I love drones. It's not the drone we can buy from, Costco for
Right.
$600, but, I don't
You know,
mind having one.
I think I remember when Rod had that question answered to him, and I think at the time, Rod had said, well, we're looking into it. Yeah, actually, that's something he was gonna bring forward to us. My bid is that, I don't believe there's gonna be that big of a problem getting waivers. Do you believe it? With what this city's doing and how the city's
So I
moving
do not.
forward with security and stuff, everything else, it doesn't seem like it'd be a real top question at this point in time.
Because we're a government, because we're a city, other cities have way worse airspace than what we have. And they've been able to get waivers for zero grids for their entire city for a certain height limit. What is important about the process is building up communication and a rapport with the air traffic control in your area, and let them know what your operations are, what you'll be doing, and what it's for. Every time I've dealt with air traffic control with Palmdale, they're really excited to deal with me. They're excited to help us. They were hearing about the homeless, when I was getting the zero grid waiver for the homeless map, he was excited and he was happy to hear that we were doing something.
Tim, also too, are we talking, how many drones are you thinking on getting? Is it just a one test program, 2 tests, 5, or infinite?
Obviously, you can get as many as, it can grow as large as the city wants it to grow.
Are we,
This program is scalable.
okay, so are we looking at this as part of the hybrid program too, as far as putting that into place?
Yes, sir, we are. And in fact, we're looking at something that I'm not sure if it's being done in the state. I believe they are doing it out of state, but because we have such a large city, the cities we visited, their drone programs were based on the tallest building in their city, and they would fly out of there, and there's a line of sight distance or a certain mile that you can fly it from that point. And realizing that our city is so large and we have so much going on, we want to implement a mobile drone program where we're going to have 1 to 2 vehicles with a pilot and an observer that are going to be mobile, and they'll be monitoring sheriff's department calls for service. They'll also have the ability to be, dispatched to a call for service, but they'll monitor that radio frequency, hear a deputy that's in an area that needs some air support, get within a certain distance, pull over, get it up, and get it to them.
That was gonna be my next question,
Yeah. And then the other beautiful thing about it is they have, they'll have the instant ability to shoot that information down to a cell phone, an iPad, the desk at the station, so they're getting real-time information, just like LEAPS does.
So is it the city's thinking that the cost factor on this compared to the LEAPS, is it going to be running in conjunction with each other? Is the LEAPS a completely different program and on how it's going to operate with the city? Cost factor?
So at this time, we're just exploring how the drone program is going to work and getting it into play alongside LEAPS. We haven't considered whether one is better than the other, there's a better option or not. We're also, so I've started to speak with LASD Aero Bureau and trying to figure out what are the true capabilities of the helicopter, and how often is it up, and how often can it get to Lancaster, because there is a ship that's supposed to be up, and that's supposed to support the 3 cities. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about that as well. But
And the response time to put something like this up is pretty quick, right, Ron?
yes, sir, it is. It's pretty quick. And I'll also tell you that we're working with Congressman Garcia's office to look at funding as well, besides the funding we already have in place.
What does the technology look like for extending the battery life? That seems like an awful short time. If there was an ongoing chase or something like that, to where you wouldn't necessarily be able to bring the drone in and get the battery changed.
Right. Every year, the battery life has increased by about 10%. There is going to be a limit based on weight. So you can build a bigger drone, put a bigger battery on it, but there's a ratio there. We're also looking at a hydrogen-powered drone, because we were looking at US-made drones. That's pretty expensive, but its flight time is at 3 hours. So there are capabilities, and they are working with it. That is one of the drawbacks. But like I said, you can 40 miles across without traffic to where you're stationed, swap out the batteries, and 40 miles an hour, it could fly back to the site.
The other side of that, Commissioner, is that's the advantage of the mobile program too, because we can get our vehicle within 3 miles of the deployment site and get them back in, minutes and back up.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, if you have 2 drones and you have one up in the air, one will be charged and you can swap them out unlimitedly. So you won't have to worry about having a consistent charge with one drone.
The other drone could show up on the scene.
And the other one can fly back. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's 45 minutes flying time. That's pretty good battery, it is. And I heard in news, LAPD is getting it, the SWAT team's getting, and dog now is,
Yes, sir.
I guess it's next, it's coming.
Robot dog is next. I'll just add one more thing. One of the things we really love about this program is we're talking about, depending on how we want to work our, full-time employee and part-time. We're even considering volunteers for the observers, so that certain community members might be able to come and support, because the observer only requires a small class that you have to take. We're going to do investigations and make sure we got the right individuals. They do not fly the bird, they just assist as an observer. But what we really love about it is with this program, for that cost we showed you, we're talking about either 8 or 10 hours of availability of air support. If you got 2 birds, you're talking maybe a 16-hour day, depending on how you want to deploy them, where we're going to have air support. So.
Is this remote pilot, I'm assuming, going to be having the qualifications similar to that of law enforcement? Or is it just going to be just a normal occupant job to where you don't have to have any security or any connection with law enforcement?
So no, you do not have to be a law enforcement person to fly the drones. In fact, the cities we visited, I heard of one city now, Downey, who supposedly is putting the drone in every police officer's car. I haven't seen that yet, but that's what we're hearing that they are planning on doing. So every individual police officer will have the ability to pull over and put it up. That sounds like a bit much to me. Maybe some confusion in there as to who deploys, I don't know. But with like Santa Monica, I believe the bird is piloted by...
Yes, they have a contract agency that they use as the remote pilot in command, and so they're on the roof. It's Flying Lions, that's the contract agency. So they have certified pilots that are just there to make sure that the plane doesn't run into anything and that it's flying correctly and that there's nothing in the airspace. The deputy is actually in a control station downstairs and operating the drone from where he sits. The remote pilot upstairs is just to take the sticks if something is in the way.
What we're going to do, obviously, is we're talking a city employee, so we're going to, do our background investigation, involve the sheriff's department in that, to ensure they're happy with the individual who's piloting the drone, and work from there.
Sorry, Commissioner. The night vision on that, is that an additional accessory that has to be added to the drone, or is it already incorporated in the original spec of the drone?
That comes with the original spec of the 15,000.
Okay.
So that zoom camera that was on there and the thermal is on this drone for 15,000. We're looking at some USA-made drones and the same capability. It's about 65,000.
Tim, as far as how high can they fly again? I'm sorry.
So drones aren't supposed to be above 400 feet.
Right.
So you could be 400 feet within visual line of sight. Above that is the national airspace where the helicopters and the planes are supposed to be in.
But they can go higher.
Yeah, the planes could go higher.
No, I mean, as far as the drones, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
I know that we've had a little bit of experience with using drones on aerials and I'm a little surprised at how high they go, number one. 'Cause
Yeah.
you can't see them. And number two is the quality of pictures is phenomenal. But also, too, I see that you had a requirement of 33 miles an hour wind. Some of these
Right.
I've heard say can be in 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts.
Some of them,
Yeah.
some of them can handle the large wind.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to the slide, but of it, yeah. So this one's stable in 33 miles per
Okay.
hour. The Beverly Hills, we talked to them and they're like, we've flown it in 35.
Yeah.
We've flown it when it's crazy outside. We've flown it when it's mist and rain. We've flown it in severe conditions and it works.
Yeah.
And this is one that works.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it work, and, you know, so I was just curious on that. And you have to be a certified pilot? I mean, a drone pilot, you said?
Yeah, so FAA has a certification process. You have to take a test and pass the test and then get your certified pilot license. Most people take a week-long class to take and be able to pass this test.
And I'm sorry, maybe you said I missed it. How high are we actually talking about having the drones fly on a regular basis?
The highest would be 400 feet.
That's an arbitrary choice. You could go higher by function, it's just a rule at this point, right?
Right. So you could shoot this thing up 3 miles in the air, straight up. That's not advisable. Because of the, you're not seeing the planes that are up there. Yeah, but there will be a limit set in the program of how high we're supposed to go in certain grids. And it'll be geofenced if we're not supposed to go in certain areas. Anything else?
So we have the LEAPS program, excuse me. There was something, and I'm a little confused about when we're talking about helicopters versus drones.
So there is a Sheriff's Aero Bureau, or the regular Sheriff's Air Support that is up. North County has a bird that's dedicated to it, a sheriff's airship. Lawrence, and what do they call it, 38 or 48 or something like that, if you know?
So the Aero unit has like, I believe it's Air 21. I think.
There we go.
Yeah, Air 21, and then that's just their identifier, but it still takes them quite a bit of time to get over the basin, depending on weather conditions, to us.
Yeah, and I'm trying to connect with, John's trying to connect me with the captain of that bureau, because we want to get a realistic idea of how often it's up, how accessible it is, what winds it won't fly in, because we do hear a lot of complaints from the deputies about it not being available. Now, due to weather. Currently, and that's why our LEAPS program has been fantastic. Currently, we're not paying for that because there is an additional charge, and I think it's per deployment or per minute it's up over your city actually taking activity. So I'm trying to get some additional information on that, but I really want to get a realistic look at, is it useful? Are we going to be able to get it during our normal weather conditions?
Right. And whether they're deployed elsewhere at the same time.
Correct.
So we have patrol function, right? So where you're kind of keeping an eye out for suspicious-looking activity. Then we have incident function, where something is going on that we're concerned about. We want to be able to get eyes on the ground as quickly as possible. And I think about, I mentioned this last time, that I think about Sergeant Owens. There's a situation where he probably would be alive today had we had drone activity in those days. And then there's this confusing element of cost. The cost of the aircraft and the fixed-wing aircraft with respect to LEAPS cost of a drone, which currently we're saying somewhere in the range of 15,000. Helicopters off the chart. You could buy a lot of drones for some of the cost of these other aircraft. And you're looking at a pilot program where you're talking about 2 drones, but there's no, at that price, there's no reason you couldn't have a drone in every patrol vehicle, which allows you to think about what your patrol opportunities might be and how they might be different.
Very true, sir.
Commissioner Brown, so the sergeants, the field sergeants are usually the ones that carry all of the unique tools when we have something that happens. So if anything, the field sergeants would be the ones that would carry the drones inside of the vehicle, because if we're in an active foot pursuit, no one's going to have time to pull a drone out of a vehicle, even if we do have it in our car. So it would be a request for a field sergeant with a drone to deploy while we have eyes on the suspect.
Right, that makes perfect sense. And again, I'm trying to get my head around this. There's different platforms, different costs, and different capabilities. Do you have a combination, or do you, which direction should we be going in? I don't think it's clear, but this whole technology is fascinating and a terrific new opportunity. Obviously, when we started LEAPS, none of this was even conceivable.
So true. So currently, we're thinking combination and figuring out, how that would work best. We still have steps we need to take in order to actually have a drone as a first responder program. That includes some approval by the Sheriff's Department. They're actually looking at that now. They use drones, but more or less they're used for Special Enforcement Bureau, their SWAT team. But they do have a capability to get a drone up in a city, but the hoops you have to go through, the approvals, and getting it from East LA up to here to be deployed, there's, just isn't conceivable. So, but they're actually working on, Captain Leckervane has me connected with Captain C2, who is out of Lost Hills Station, and then I think there's one other captain, Motor out of West Hollywood, and we're all talking about this, and she's going through the processes of gaining approvals, and we're working with Captain Leckervane to be one of the 3 pilot program stations for a drone program for the Sheriff's Department.
So very interesting. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
One last question. What is your estimated time frame?
This guy keeps thinking he gets to sit down. I'm sorry, sir. Could you ask that question again?
Do we have an estimated time frame that we're looking at?
Well, I mean, honestly, we could get our drone and be ready to go in probably a month or less if we needed to. So, but I'm working closely with John because we want to make sure it fits into the Sheriff's Department approvals and requirements. But we're now exploring the purchase. This drone, even if the Sheriff's Department had decided, hey, we don't want to use drones right now, it's still going to benefit our city for our uses. So we're going to be making the purchase really soon and having the ability to do what we need to do in public safety. So.
Can I go now?
Wait a minute, Tim. No, just.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. In the interest of time, I'm just going to ask, is there any objection to adopting the consent calendar as presented with the approval of minutes? Hearing none, consent calendar is approved. We're at just about before noon and heading into the normal agenda. Just want to ask, Commission, do you want to take a 5-minute break or move ahead? Okay, let's go ahead and move ahead. Okay, LA County Sheriffs.
Real quick, I do agree with Commissioner Harris. If it's possible to re-adjourn and do a different date, and it works with everyone, it may be something we want to consider, but otherwise, we don't have to do it.
Yeah, I think we would have to get at least to that. And my only question, we've got folks that have come to
We tried, Howard, we tried.
make presentations, but it's up to the commission.
I'm willing to skip if you guys want to go to the speaker cards. So it's up to you.
Okay.
Not necessarily
Maybe we should
skip
put a-
it.
You can skip me if you like.
Highway Patrol is
Not
not
here.
here.
And maybe we can do Deputy Greens next time.
We'll just hold our,
Yeah.
let's hold our comments and let them do their presentation
Okay.
until the end, and that might help.
Yeah,
Maybe something.
well, yeah, okay. I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and go forward. We'll just hold our questions till the end of each presentation.
So you want me to continue the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, understood. All right, I'm gonna make it very quick, guys. I'm not gonna go through too much detail. Comp stats for the city of Lancaster for January 2023. Your homicides are up slightly, averaging 2, as of the month of January. We go back January because we need a more accurate number, so that's why we're 2 months back. We're up in the month of January, or decrease in the month of January, so that's good. When you see green, that's a good thing. 38% decrease overall, 200% increase. Homicide comparison, if you go through January through December from 2023 to 2022. Now, gets very confusing, guys. I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see the breakdown. If you see a decrease, that's a good thing. If you see an increase, that's not too good. Okay? It'll be usually in red. Rapes over a period of a year have gone down in the month of January, averaging around 7. Now, as you see, there's red here, 9.59% increase for the rape comparison. All of this is available. If you guys need it, come see me after the presentation, and I will give you the PDF version of this. It is available to anybody that requests it. Let's go over to our robberies. They are down, averaging 28 in the month of January of 2023. There's your comparison, a slight increase of 25.97%. Aggravated assaults over a period of a year have slightly gone up, averaging 87. As you can see, there is a 24.76% increase from February of last year to January of last year. I'm going to get this modified just slightly so we can get a better understanding of how this works. Because it's too detailed, I want to make it very user-friendly. There's certain things that you guys are requesting that I want you guys to be able to see right off the bat. Domestic violence has gone up in the month of January, averaging around 11. Your domestic violence comparison chart shows a 22.33% increase. If we go over from January 2023 to January 2022, there's a 40% increase over a year period. Burglaries averaging 65, slightly down. Your comparison for burglaries have a 32.13% increase over a year period. You got it's still hanging around that 30%. Your larceny and thefts have gone down, averaging 110. Your larceny and thefts comparison, slight increase of 21.13%. Over a period of a year, you actually have a decrease of 7%. Grand theft vehicles over a period of a year, averaging 90. Your comparison shows a 1.74% decrease. Over a period of a year, you got about 11% increase. Arson's down, averaging 4%, or averaging 4. If you look at the comparison, you got no change over a period of a year. Your Part 1 crimes, averaging 388, slightly down. And then as you can see here, you have a 13.31% increase, only a 3% increase over a period of a year. There's your hot spots for the month of January 2023. They're always going to be, or I don't want to say always, but usually in the business districts, hanging around Lancaster Boulevard and around Avenue K in the business district along the freeway and 10th Street West. I know I went very quick, guys, and I apologize, but for the sake of time, I'm trying to get to the report. You guys have any questions? No? Okay, that'll be it for Lancaster Sheriff's Station. There are your definitions of your crimes in case you guys have any questions. And once again, if you need the PDF, come talk to me and I will get it to you email, digitally. Thank you.
Okay, I had a request for time if we could jump to the district attorney. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, I can make it real quick though.
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted Deputy Paul Versati, he's our coordinator for the mobile resource unit. We actually brought it today.
Oh.
As we go over it, so I was gonna invite anyone that wants to take a peek at it, it's right across the street.
Oh, okay.
But we can wait if anybody's interested, if not, we can do it another time.
Oh, okay.
But
Well,
that's my presentation.
oh, okay, great. Is that something we can do at the completion of the end of the meeting?
Yeah, we can wait around it.
Okay.
If you guys wanna take a peek at it, we can open it up and kind of show you how it works.
Okay, that'd be great.
We'll get it ready.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sherwood.
Okay, yeah, I'll run through the stats real quick. February, we did not file any arson cases. We only file one every 2 months. Autoburgs, we filed 14. Normally, yearly average is 12. Burglary, we filed 7. The yearly average is 8. Criminal threats, 5. Yearly average is 4. Did not file any drug sales cases, which is unusual. Usually we file approximately 3 a month. Domestic violence, 9. That's the yearly average. Our office is undergoing a major change in our domestic violence and sex crimes. I'll talk about that more next month. Evadings, felony hit and runs, 4. Yearly average is 1.5 per month. Felony assaults, we filed 10. Yearly average is 13. Felony DUIs, we filed 2. Yearly average is 1. Grand theft, 5. That's the yearly average. Illegal firearms, 16. Yearly average is 15. Murders, attempt murders, we filed 1. Yearly average is 2. Robberies, we filed 3. Yearly average is 7. Robberies have been significantly down the last few months. Sex crimes, we filed 4. The yearly average is 6. Vandalism's just 1. The yearly average is 3. That's all I've got for this month.
Just a quick question, if maybe next month, I'd be curious in finding out of how many restraining orders people are applying for each month, and maybe how many have been accepted versus how many have been violated?
When you say, you want to know restraining order charges?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can get that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, city attorney.
I'm sorry, so the city attorney had another meeting she had to run off to.
All right,
but
then
so-
we'll go to you. for
All right,
public safety.
I'll be quick here. We are, for the hybrid program, we're hiring our assistant director, our manager, that's kind of the lieutenant and the sergeant, and our assistant manager, which is our training manager. And we're hiring our law enforcement technicians, which are the ones that are going to go out and take reports and affect response time. So we're excited about that. There's some other pieces we're hiring, but those are the primaries, and I want to thank Commissioners Paris and McCracken for coming to help us with the interviews. As mentioned, I want to make sure we have the commissioners and as community members participate in our selection. Some others have volunteered. We'll probably reach out because there's other pieces coming, and we'll want your help as well. The flock cameras. Man, those things are something else. They've been up a little under a month, and I don't have the month stat, but I can tell you this, the first 24 hours, they got 5 stolen cars. The first 2 weeks, and I kind of got this on a text from one of our Lancaster deputies, they identified 2 murder vehicles and the suspects. They got 2 robbery vehicles, an assault with a deadly weapon vehicle, and somewhere around 15 stolen cars in the first 2 weeks. And those numbers are probably greater because the department's still trying to figure out how to track that. But as Deputy Green will tell you, they are definitely helping with the crime issues out there.
I had 25 hits in 30 minutes. 25 hits in 30 minutes.
How many
and out of
cameras?
those 25 hits, I want to say 20 different vehicles.
And investigators are using them. In fact, one of the murder vehicles was kind of a body dumped, and they got a brief description of that car. They loaded it into the system, and they tracked that thing all over the city. and were able to figure out where it was at and identify the vehicle and the suspect off of that. Phenomenal.
How many cameras up?
We currently have 50 up. So, and then just let you know, and continuing with our addressing problem locations, I spoke with you about the Lancaster Inn before. 900 calls for service in 3 years, 45% were violent. And then we had, unfortunately, the death of a young woman who was burned in her room about a month ago or so. Well, us working with the Sheriff's Department, we got that place shut down. And it is now gated up and up for sale. So we're just going to continue to find locations that are draws on the sheriffs and issues for our community and figure ways to either get them to comply or figure out what else we have to do.
Well, that's great news all around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Legislative office, Assemblyman Carrillo's office. Right there. Oh, there you go. Come on up. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely. My name is Kimball with the Assemblyman Creel's office. Just to be real quick, last month we talked about I would come back with the committees he was on. He's on the Select Committee of Mobility, the Rules Committee, Education Committee, Transportation Committee, and Military and Veteran Affairs Committee. And I just want to kind of just talk to you guys just real quick about legislation that he had placed out there. Just identify two here. AB 1536. That's the Chair Human Services. This bill seeks to expand the currently existing cash assistance program for immigrants to allow access to program regardless of immigration status. And then AB 1580. The EV infrastructure deployment plan, transportation. And this bill would require the Commission and Department of Transportation on or before June 30th, 2024 to jointly develop a state electric vehicle infrastructure development plan that is consistent with the federal requirements and guidance provided by the Federal National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure and Formula Program. And then finally, just want to let everybody know that we will be opening up our offices in Palmdale. That is 823 East Avenue, Q9. And next meeting, I'll come back with the telephone number just in case constituents want to contact us and need any help with state-related items. And we've got a meeting scheduled, I think, in April with our Public Safety Department there at our offices. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Great, thank you. Quick question, AB 1580 on the electric, is that electric vehicles only, or would that include any green vehicles like hydrogen?
Yeah, I can get back to you guys on that in the next meeting. I'll put that out as a note.
It's more off topic. I just, you know,
no
we're doing
issue.
work at the city for hydrogen, so.
Gotcha. I'll answer that. Get back to you guys with that information. Though. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, okay. So we move on then? Okay. So then we're moving on to public business from the floor, non-agenda items.
This is the time to address the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission on non-agendized matters. Speaker cards can be found on the back table of the council chambers. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each unless a different time limit is announced. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, we have one speaker card. David Paul, come on up. Nope. Oh, he waves? Okay. Well, thank you. Commissioner comments. Commissioner McCracken.
Wait, real quick.
Oh.
Miss, I thought you had a yellow card. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Great, thank you. Commissioner Hurt?
No.
Commissioner Paris? No. Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Harris, Vice Chair Little? No, good. Nope, none for me. Thank you, everybody, for coming in.